Hello, Year 6, it's Mrs. Hattrick. I'm back for your next art lesson. I hope you got on well with your potatoes and learned lots about how to make things have real form by using contours, because we're going to use that today. I'm just going to share my screen with you so you can have a look what I'm talking about. Right, so we're going to have a look at some more of Henry Nor's fantastic shelter pictures. I think they're very beautiful and very dramatic and really encapsulate what was going on down in the underground during these sort of bombing raids and the Blitz. And I'm sure they'd fit really beautifully with some of the poetry you wrote last week. So if you see in these two images here, all of these that they're doing, and this is what you're going to be doing today, all these images are real sketches. Some were taken from memory, some when he went down and experienced being in the shelter. Other images, he obviously took sketch pads and drew them and then went back into the studio and worked on them later. So I want you to have a look at this image on the right here of these two figures, and it's really beautiful how you can tell that he's worked on the contour lines to really drape the fabric over these two bodies that are sharing a blanket. So that's one of the pieces I'd like you to work on today. And you can see how he's used those marks, those contour marks, really to go over and over, a bit like you did with the potato, to get it really looking like it's form, solid form, rather than just two flat bodies. So that's one image I'd like you to look at. So we're going to be looking at how to make things have really solid form through drawing. The other thing we're going to be looking at is perspective, because the composition and perspective used in these images are fantastic. So can you see here how he's got two rows of bodies going into the distance? They're getting from large, getting smaller and smaller and smaller, going down into the distance. And that's his use of perspective. And then in the same way, he's got the tunnel curving over, and he's very cleverly just drawn these circles. You can see really big here, in fact, going off the page, as it were, getting smaller and smaller to this focal point in the middle. So that's very interesting perspective there. On this image here, which these are some of the sketches I'd like you to have a go at, I want you to think about this bottom image here, how he's used the bench. So again, it's starting wide and narrowing, because that's how you draw your perspective. The figures position there. And it's really beautiful. He hasn't positioned his figures in the middle. They're slightly offset, which makes the composition really interesting. Remember, we did composition with your landscape drawings last term. How you position things on the page is really important. So here the eye is drawn from the front of the seat down into the distance to make you feel that it's a really spacious, long tube. So I think that's a wonderful drawing. And again, he's used the curves of the contours, so it looks like the figures are draped and snuggling together. You don't have to worry about hands, you don't have to worry about heads, just use the shape of the head or feet, because they're hidden away, because those are really tricky things to draw. And then this image you can have a go at, because this bottom one of the tube, because it's really interesting again how the tube line, the track, goes down and away. There's actually a figure standing there, which is lovely. You might not have noticed that. But again, it's got these arches of the dark tube. They're all dimly lit and they're all quite dark. He's used some wax, he's used some wax resist, he's used some ink, lots of scratchy lines and mark making to make these really interesting. So those are the things you're going to be working on. Lots of sketching, lots of experimenting again, and this is building up to your final piece of work. So these are some sketches I did. I just wanted to show you this, to show you the stages you need to go through. You don't have to. I put this in front of me because I wasn't working near a screen, but you could have the image in front of you on a screen if you don't have it printed out. And then I just put a little shape on my page of my sketchbook, on my piece of paper. And to begin with, I used that backwards forwards drawing technique that we did for the outline of the potato, just to get the position of the figures together. So I was happy. Any mistakes, it doesn't matter, because you're going to draw into it. And then after that, when I was happy with the position of the two figures together, I then worked over this picture here. First, I put some background, actually really nice horizontal marks going out. So again, it's a bit like a shadow that we did with the potato. It weights the figures down so they don't look like they're floating on the piece. Here, they look like they're sort of floating, but here they now look anchored and weighted down. And I've kept them, like Henry Moore has, going out horizontally. And then I've just used contour lines to go over and over, many more dark lines in the deep creases. And suddenly you go from a flat image to this amazing shape. You can see the contours going up and over to make you feel like you've got form. I actually added in a little bit of yellow colouring in pencil, just as Henry Moore did, to make it look like a cream blanket. I've got a video here of me having a go at my sketch, which I'm going to show you just so you get the idea of the technique of going over and over with these contour lines. So you see I'm going up and over and keeping the pencil moving all the time, just to get that flow, and you have to work into it quite a lot. It's going up and over, really to fill the shapes of those bodies, just like you did when you were drawing your potatoes, to go around the potato to get the idea of the contour. There was a reason, you see, for drawing potatoes. That just helps you get an idea. Lots, keep them going up and to get the shapes. Otherwise the bodies look really, really flat. Great. Then after that, I decided actually in quite a sort of World War II way that it would be really nice to do some drawing on some brown paper. I always keep little bits of packaging paper and things that I think are interesting on. You don't do, but if you've got some around the house. And I then would like you to draw some of these images here to start thinking about composition, the position of the figures on the page, and perspective. So the first one here that I've done is image A, which is of these two figures sitting on a seat. And again, you can see here it's very wide to get the perspective, and it's like a triangle going out into the distance to get the perspective. And again, I've got these two huddled figures, and here in the distance, a tiny circular tube, and then coming round, 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 round to get those feeling of distance going into the distance. I actually had some chalk, some white chalk in my kitchen. So I added a bit of white here just to add a bit of light, a bit of interest. And then the second one you can have a go at is this image here, which on the previous slide, to get this idea of perspective as a train track going off into the distance. And again, an arch, a big arch out on the foreground, going back smaller and smaller and smaller to a black hole, which is draws the eye. You can tell you that it feels like the tube is disappearing off there. And again, I just used white chalk. I had some brown colouring pencils at home, but you could use tea staining, wax resist if you want to, do these white lines on white paper and then stain it with tea and coffee like we did. Whatever materials you've got at home that you can use would be fantastic. And please, 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 don't forget to share these with us. I was in school last week. I'm now back looking at your emails and looking at your work, and I'd love to see some of the artwork you produce. So it is quite challenging this week, but I think actually the work you did last week and the work you've done previously in school will really help you with this. So go for it and see how you get on.